Police called a medic, this beat came to me on a stretcher. In the lab, I step to the mic and feel like I'm Dexter. I'm a man, dark world, but I'm still shining like treasure. Yeah, I got joy like ha ha ha. Wait, and I can't wear smiles, that's fake. Then I'm between love and strong. Hey, clock says no time for mistakes. Ring the alarm, sirens go off, but I'm calm. My life resides in his palm. Submit to my pops, respect for my mom. Honoring both, so my life will be long. Third time is the charm of the third strike. Had to.
What's going on out there, American truckers? Welcome to Trucking with Old Snapper, and of course, I am your host, Old Snapper. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. We do everything here trucking related, trucking news, trucking funnies, you name it, we do it over here. Anyway, in today's video, we're going to get into union or non-union. It's just going to be my opinion is all it's going to be. Everybody's got a different view on it. Everybody's welcome to put their view out there. Nothing wrong with that, and we'll put mine out there. At the moment, I'm sitting in Olympia, Washington, waiting on a backhaul back to Texas. I did a swap day before yesterday, and when I did the swap, the lady on the phone that night told me, she said, well, if you want the backhaul, I'll talk to backhaul and see if we can give you the backhaul that the other person had. Load coming out of Portland, going down to Dallas. And I said, sure. She said, okay, well, I'll talk to backhaul and find out. No, she never called me back. Nobody ever called me. And I didn't have the broker's information, so I couldn't call the broker. I didn't even know who the broker was. No idea where. I knew the load picked up in Portland, but didn't know where the load picked up in Portland. You know, so I had literally no information. And when no one called back, I thought, well, maybe it didn't work out. They wanted the other driver to take the backhaul. So that's fine. So I went ahead and put myself on the backhaul board. Well, nobody calls me yesterday when the load was supposed to pick up. They called me the day after the load's supposed to have picked up. And they're like, hey, why didn't you pick up the backhaul? Well, I didn't pick up the backhaul because I didn't know I had the backhaul. And I didn't have the broker's information. I didn't have nothing. No way of knowing. You know, so we had a little bit of a mix-up. So they put me back on the board. They're looking for me a load. Hopefully they get me the hell out of here because I am ready to get out of Washington. Ready to get back to some normal weather. As y'all know, this time of the year along the I-5 corridor up here, it rains every day, all day, nonstop. And I haven't seen the sunshine in several days now, and it's getting kind of depressing. And I can't even get out and walk depression off because I'm stuck in the truck. But anyway, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. Let's talk about this union versus non-union thing. Now, if you're a union supporter, you're probably not going to like my views on it, and that's understandable, you know. And if you wait to the end of this video, you'll have your answer as to how I truly view it all the way down in a nutshell. It'll be right at the end of this video, you know. So before you comment and cuss me out, you're probably going to want to hear that part. But and I don't know why, but when you go to talking this subject, for some reason, people that are in the union get really offended. And I have no idea why. I mean, why get so defensive about something? I mean, you know, it's just a job. It's just a job. We all have a right to feel however we want to feel about a job. It'd be like people at TA being mad at the people that work at Pilot, you know, or Flying J. It don't make no sense. You know what I'm saying? Now, what's Old Snapper's view on the union? Well, I'm not a union guy. I've been around it. I come from a union family. My stepfather was a union guy for Alcoa for 34 years, I believe. It may have been a little longer, but I know at least 34 years. He was a control operator for Alcoa. He started out, I believe, Mobile, Alabama, and then he transferred up to Indiana and eventually ended up down in South Texas, Point Comfort operations, you know. So I grew up around the union and what they do a little bit. And, you know, I know a little bit about them. Plus, I watched him retire. And for those of you that don't know, Alcoa was the United Steelworkers Union. So that's the union that Alcoa belonged to. That's the union that their workers belonged to. Now, Alcoa also had non-union guys in there, but if you worked for Alcoa themselves, you were union. And some of the contractors were non-union, because I know CCC did some of the construction work in there. So did Hydrochem, which I worked for Hydrochem at one time. We were non-union. Valley was in there. Valley was non-union. Brown and Root and and those guys used to go in there sometimes and do some work. They were non-union. But if you worked for Alcoa, most everybody I know of, everyone I know of, was union, including my stepfather. But anyway, he had been union for 34 years. He retired in 2014 or 2015. I think the end of 2014, Christmas time 2014, I believe, was when he retired. But anyway, I'm not really for a union. I've worked around them, been around them. I believe everybody got their right to choose. I'm just myself, not for a union. I don't promote it. I wouldn't work for a company that's union. And I said this same thing when I worked in a steel mill. Years ago, I worked in a steel mill in Midlothian, Texas. Back then it was Chaparral Steel. I think another company has it now. But I said the same thing then, because at that time there were guys trying to push union, to bring union into the steel mill. I said, no, y'all bring a union in, I'm gone. I will leave. And there were some other guys that felt the same way because they had been around unions too. And I feel the same way now. You bring a union in, old Snapper's gone. The second they tell me the union's coming in and I got to start paying union dues, I'm out. I go to work somewhere else. That ain't me. That's not my thing. All right, now I'm gonna get into a little bit of why. For those of y'all that have been following me for a while, you know that before I drove trucks, I was an industrial electrician, primarily in heat tracing. Heat tracing can be done in the form of electrical and steam. I did both, and it's used in chemical plants and power plants. Those are refineries like Exxon, Shell, Mobil, Formosa. They're used in both process and freeze protection. Processes, some chemicals require to maintain a certain temperature in order to maintain their chemical composure. If they get warmer or cooler, they'll change to a different substance. It might go from gas to liquid, might go from liquid to gas. Depends on what it is. So they bring heat trace technicians in, and designers like companies like Thermon, Tyco Thermal Controls, companies like that. I did that for many years. I worked my way up. I was a supervisor out there whenever that line of work, back in 2008, whenever the economy crashed. And I ended up coming into trucking so that I could stay working. And over the years of doing that, I worked with guys that were union, worked around them all the time. Matter of fact, my very last job, the very last heat tracing job I did, well, not the last one because I've done a couple since I've been driving trucks, but the last one I did before I got my CDL was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. If any of y'all have ever driven through there, you see the two stacks. There's actually a ethanol refinery right there owned by ADM, Archer Daniels Midland. Where the two stacks are, that's the original plant. That's the old plant. If you drive down through there, right across the street, they've got an identical unit to it. And that's the new plant, or what we refer to it as the new plant. 2006, 2007, 2008, that refinery was being built. And they ran pipeline across the street over the road, connected the two units up. And anyway, being there in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, being its area it's in, and we were doing electric trace out there, so we're all electricians on that job. I worked around union electricians. I was a supervisor on that job. So I had to give, anytime we did an installation out there, which that was a $4 million job, that means our part of that job was $4 million. So we had a lot of heat trace in that unit. There's a lot of heat trace that goes into an ethanol refinery, especially up north. And every time we installed, I had to take the drawings, redline the drawings. I had to note where the power kits were, where the end kits were, all that stuff, and take it to union electricians because they would be running the power supply from the MCC over to wherever our power boxes were. Also, because they use unions up there, if anything ever needed to be worked on, they'd be bringing those guys in there to work on it. We wouldn't be coming back to work on it. It'd be the IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. They're out of the Cedar Rapids area that would maintenance all that, right? I believe they had the maintenance contract out there and probably still do. So I dealt with them on a regular basis all the time. And I had no problem dealing with union guys. Now, union guys didn't like dealing with non-union guys. They preferred to have all the work, which I can understand. It keeps their guys working. They got guys sitting at home that are not working, So in the union, it works a little different. So I've worked around them quite a bit. Also in Beaumont in CB&I, Chicago Bridge and Iron, they had a refinery out there on the island for a long time. I think it's closed down now. But they would build these skids, and basically it was a put-together plant. We built a plant for Sunoco up in Philadelphia. They built it down there. They'll build it in sections, and then they take the sections, they put it on barges, and then they run it up to wherever it's going. And then they'll put the sections together and hook the piping together, weld it up, bolt it up, however it's done. But we would come in and we would heat trace it. Heat traced everything on drawings that required heat tracing. And then when it got to the other end, they would just hook it up from pipe to pipe, and then run power kit obviously would be at one end, and then the end kit would be at the other. That's a short form way of me explaining it. Or if it was steam trace, it'd be the same way. You would just 90 out, 90 over, and then put a dead leg on it. And then whenever they got to the other end, they would flex it in, hooking the steam trace together so you could put steam through the system. But on that job there in Beaumont, we worked side by side with union electricians out there as well. And that was one time that I'd actually kind of given some thought to it. One of the guys out there that was working for the IBEW, me and him became friends. Back in those days, I used to hang out in the bars a little bit, and me and him used to go to the bar and shoot pool in the afternoon. And he kind of halfway had me talked into it. So I went down there and talked to the IBEW. Now, mind you, at this time, I'd already had some experience. I think I was a journeyman down there, and so I knew what I was doing a little bit. I already had that lined out. So I go down there and I talk to the IBEW. First and foremost, they told me, well, since you'd be new with the IBEW, we'd have to start you off at bottom pay for wherever you test out at. Okay, that's fine. And then they told me, they said, well, you're going to sit at the house probably your first year, because you got to work into seniority in order to get on a job. I said, well, can I work non-union jobs? And they was kind of iffy about that. He said, well, you can, but you can't. I mean, it was stupid, And I'm sure some unions are different. Some unions probably allow you to work non-union jobs when they don't have work. Some unions probably don't. It just depends. But he was a little iffy, kind of on the fence with that. But long story short, by the time I walked out of there, I didn't want no part of it. I was going to take less money. I was probably not going to work the first year. My benefits were less than what I had. My retirement was less than what I already had. And it was like, no, it's not worth going over there just because me and old boy are good friends. It ain't going to happen. So I never went. Another thing that kind of turned me off to the union is my stepdad, like I told y'all, he worked 34 years for the union, for the International United Steelworkers Union. And when he retired, his retirement, his pension, everything was $40,000. 34 years, $40,000. That's what he had when he walked out the door. If it wasn't for Social Security, they'd be homeless. And it was like all those years. And you might say, well, the union has good retirement. The problem with it is your upper management, your people at the top within the union, they steal from those retirements. And then every time they go on strike and do a negotiation, they'll cut this, cut that. We got to take away from this, do that. They move everything around. Well, when you do a bunch of years with the union, you take a chance on losing money with your retirement. That's exactly what happened to him. He lost out. So when he retired, they'd already gone on strike a couple of times and negotiated the rates a few times. And by the time it happened, he come around to retirement. He didn't have no retirement. $40,000. That's what he retired with. I got more than $40,000 in my retirement in the first 6 or 7 years out here. There ain't no reason for it. The other issue that I have with the union is it promotes, in my opinion, and this is probably going to piss a lot of people off, but in my opinion, it promotes bad employees. Because if you get a bad employee, it's hard to get rid of them in a union. There's a lot of process, a lot of steps they got to go through to get somebody who's not worth the crap. So the guy that's not worth the crap but has seniority will outrank the guy that works really hard, never misses, but doesn't have any seniority. And to me, it promotes the wrong work environment, period. Another reason that I don't like unions is because I don't want to pay anybody to go to work. I already pay the government to go to work. That's what income taxes are. It ain't no different than the mob, what they were doing to people back in the day when they were shaking people down. in order to work in a certain area. The government says if you're going to go to work, you got to pay us in order to work in this country, and that's what we do. We pay income taxes. I don't want to pay somebody else a due to go to work. Another reason I don't like it is I don't feel like I need to pay anybody to negotiate for me. I can negotiate my own wage. I don't need anybody to negotiate for me. I'm my own man. I don't need anybody else to do it for me. And that's something else that I don't really care for with unions. Now, that being said, I do believe the union had its heyday, had a point when it first came about. I believe when the unions first came about, early 1900s, I believe that it was needed at that time. There was a lot of things going on within the workforce. I don't believe it's needed as much today. Now, with that being said as well, and here's the part I wanted everybody to hear. If you choose to be union, that's great. I don't have a problem with that at all. I choose to be non-union. What I do have a problem with, though, is when people come to work wherever I'm at and then try to promote a union environment. No, don't do that. You keep your union over there. If you want to be union, go to work for a company that's union. There are trucking companies that are union. If you want to be a part of the union, go to work for one of them. There's several of them out there. I think UPS is union. Old Dominion, I think they're union. There's probably a couple of others. I don't understand this ideal that people have that they need to go change the world to fit them. Like, if you don't like it, go to work somewhere else. It's just like me. If I was for the union, I would be working at a company that's union. But I'm not. So I'm not working for a company that's union. And I don't want it to be union. And even if the company I worked for decided they wanted to bring a union in, I'd leave. I'd bounce. I ain't wasting no time about it. I don't want to discuss it. I ain't having a conversation. We ain't negotiating. I'm cleaning my truck out, man. It was great working for y'all. We will part ways. I will go on about my direction and I will go to work somewhere else. But that's my own prerogative. That's how I feel about it. That's my choice, right? And I feel like those guys that want to work union, that's their choice. I wouldn't go to work for a union company and then promote non-union ideals. Wouldn't make any sense. Why would if I don't support the union, why would I be working for a union company? You see what I'm saying? Well, it's the same thing with why come to a non-union company and then promote union ideals. You have a choice. There's plenty of companies out there. And if you're a non-union guy but you want to work union, I'm sure you'll probably be able to look down in the comments after this video's been out a couple months. I'm sure you will see plenty of union comments down there, because those guys get really offended, really, really offended for some reason. I don't get offended at guys that want to work union. It doesn't matter to me. But for some reason, those guys get very offended. But anyway, if you're new to the channel, like and subscribe. This ain't nothing but my opinion. That's all it is. It's just my opinion. It's how I feel about it. It's from my own personal experiences with dealing with them. I have dealt with them. If I lived in an area that was primarily union, I might have a different outlook on it. But I live in South Texas. Unions are rare. And it's just not my thing. And I'll say this too. Because somebody out there listening might be working for the company I work for and think, oh man, somebody wanting to bring union. No, I haven't heard anything like that. This is just something that I wanted to put out to kind of put my perspective on it, because I have had conversations on other social media platforms and kind of debates back and forth, and sometimes it's too much to type out. So I figured I'd just do a video on it, talk about it, explain a little bit of why. There's more reasons why. But that's pretty much the gist of why myself, I'm not for working union jobs. But anyway, y'all take care, stay safe, remember to be good to each other. Even if you are union, you're still a brother. As a driver, I still see you as a brother or sister. We're all family. We're all doing the same job out here. We're all going through the same things. We all have the same trials and errors in this line of work. It's just I myself prefer not to work union. And if you do, hey man, that's great. I hope you're happy. And that's all that matters, right? Y'all take care, stay safe, and keep trucking.